of the new Xerox technique with the storytelling and the fairy tale-ness of the older and previous Disney films, as well as the animation that would be used for decades to come. How is The Sword and the Stone, in a way, a legacy, but also forgotten? Hello, my name is Em, and welcome to my YouTube channel. I am currently on a journey where I am watching all of the Disney animated movies in chronological order and ranking them on a tier list with my husband. But before I get into our thoughts, I like to give some history and context along the movie and how it was created. So today's is Sword in the Stone. And I actually don't have a lot on Sword in the Stone, so this one's going to be a shorter episode. So I apologize for that. My research almost minuscule and nothing compared to the other ones, which is kind of crazy to me, given this is like in the era and like Disney was Disney, but okay. The Sword in the Stone premiered on December 12th, 1963 in London, and it is based on the novel of the same name written by T.H. White and published in 1938. Sebastian Cabot voices Sir Ector, Carl Swenson as Merlin, Ricky Sorensen as Arthur, and Ricky Sorensen had voiced Spotty in 101 Dalmatians. Junius Matthews as Archimedes, and he would actually go on to voice Rabbit in The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. Disney legend Ginny Tyler as the girl squirrel. So Ginny Tyler was infamous for just these little tiny voices, which is why she became a Disney legend. She'd do these little tiny animal voices and all these things. So there's all these little tiny things from shorts and stuff that I think mostly she went uncredited for. And Martha Wentworth as Madam Mim, and the other lady squirrel, so the one that tries to seduce Merlin. And Martha Wentworth had voiced Nanny in 101 Dalmatians. And both Martha Wentworth and Barbara Jo Allen would voice the maid. And Barbara Jo Allen had voiced Fauna in Sleeping Beauty. And in early 1939, Walt purchased the film rights to The Sword and the Stone. In June of 1944, after a successful re-release of Snow White, Walt assigned writers to work on the project along with the projects of Cinderella and Alice in Wonderland. And after the release of 101 Dalmatians, two projects were in development, the Chanticleer and The Sword and the Stone. I believe that other people have made videos on Chanticleer and what Chanticleer was supposed to be. It ultimately was never released. If you'd like a video on that from me, please put that in the comments and I would be down to make that. Because there were some animators that worked really hard on it and were a little bit upset that it never fully got made. And after Walt had seen the Broadway production of Camelot, which is actually where he went to see Julie Andrews and offer her the part of Mary Poppins, he approved of The Sword and the Stone to enter production. And as with 101 Dalmatians, Bill Peet actually wrote a script before producing storyboards. But he did have a little bit of a difficult time just due to figuring out the nature that he wanted for the movie. The film recycles animation, namely some of the backgrounds of the opening credits are reused from Sleeping Beauty. The scene where Sir Pellinore and Ector are laughing is reused from Sleeping Beauty, from the scene where King Stephen and King Hubert are laughing together. The deer Sir Kay fires his arrow at is actually Bambi's mother. Who knew? And there is also a scene reused from 101 Dalmatians. So it's the scene where Sir Ector swings at Sir Kay and hits him. That's reused from Horace and Jasper in 101 Dalmatians. And later films would also go on to reuse animation from The Sword and the Stone. So when those movies come up, I'll talk about that. So this was kind of a moment where animation would be reused. So I've heard about animation being reused. I'm not exactly sure what the process is. I think in some ways they just paint over the original cells with, or whatever. I think at this point they had Xerox, so I think they would Xerox the original, and I don't know exactly. If anybody knows, let me know. But I know that they would literally reuse old animation and whatever, and change it into something new, and there's videos out there saying how animation was reused, and you can look that up and comparing the two scenes and how you can see how it was reused. And apparently there are 3 Arthurs, as Ricky Sorensen, who had been cast, was going through puberty at the time of recording. So leading director Wolfgang Reitherman would cast his sons as in the part. And according to some, this leads to inconsistencies throughout Arthur's dialogue. I did not find them, but I know that for some critics and for some people, it's very noticeable. So to each their own. I've seen this movie a few times and I've never noticed it, but I guess maybe on my next rewatch, because I'll be looking for it, I'll notice it. I don't know. And The Sword and the Stone continued the Xerox process that was started by 101 Dalmatians. And the cleanup process, named Touch-Up, would be changed. So before, assistant animators would transfer the lead animator's sketches onto a sheet of paper and then copied them to animation cells. And the touch-up, this new touch-up was simply drawing directly onto the original sketches. And this streamlined the process, but assistants of Milt Kahl were fearful, as he was very anti-cleanup work. So Milt Kahl was I like to keep my drawings original. And in fact, in some of 101 Dalmatians, you can see some of his rough sketches, because he did not like to clean up. He did not like the idea of cleaning up his work. Like, he believed, like, my lines are there for a reason. So, like, some of the assistants were like, oh my gosh, don't get mad at me, please. It's just my job. Yeah. So this film earned $50.3 million in the box office when adjusted for inflation, and it has an estimated $108.6 million lifetime gross. It got mixed reviews, with critics feeling that the narrative was thin and that it changed the original story too much. I can't say that. Haven't read the book. I know. I keep saying, oh, I want to read these books. I think that's going to become a series. Can I just, like, reason with y'all? I keep saying it, and I've thought about it, and I think that's going to become a series maybe once I get members. Maybe it'll become a members-only channel, like, only series, because I'm going to have to pay, or at least maybe, yeah, I might have to pay for versions of this story, especially if it's not in the public domain. So, and guys, I'm a broke college student. I can't justify spending money when I don't have money to spend. So while I love you and while I want to do these series, it might have to wait until I get members or until I get monetized to do this. I don't worry. I have it on the back burner. I'm thinking about it. It's in my head. I have not forgotten. I really do want to read the stories that Walt adapted and talk about them, but I can't yet. Okay. So continuing on, other critics actually thought The Sword and the Stone was fun and more of an intimate film compared to other Disney films due to a smaller main cast. And this was the last animated film to be released while Walt was alive. So this is the last Disney animated film for the voice actors to be credited with the banner, with the talents of. So, yeah. This is also they changed the Buena Vista logo after this, so last one with the old Buena Vista logo, and at least the last animated film. This is the first film in the Disney animated canon to not have received a 4K release on Disney Plus without a 4K physical release. So another one would actually be The Black Cauldron. So what that technically means is it did not get a 4K like DVD or Blu-ray release. So that just means I think it got a Blu-ray release, but it wasn't released in 4K. So this was the first one to have been upgraded to 4K for the Disney Plus release and not have a 4K, whole restoration thing. I don't know. And The Sword in the Stone was nominated for the Academy Award for Best Scoring of Music. It lost. This was the first animated movie to have the songs written by the Sherman Brothers. First animated movie, I think I said might be the first Disney animated. No, this was just the first animated movie, period, to have songs written by the Sherman Brothers, which that's pretty iconic. We're living in history, everyone. And several characters from The Sword in the Stone were on House of Mouse, as like with every single movie I've covered, like everything's in House of Mouse. Disney, please put House of Mouse on Disney Plus. Thank you. And Merlin actually used to be a walk-around character. He's a little bit more rare now. I've heard of him coming back for special events and parties and stuff. And he used to host the sword pulling ceremony at Disneyland and Disney World. And I don't think that the ceremony happens anymore. If it does, it's very rare. I know it officially ended at Magic Kingdom in 2006. I don't know. I don't think they do it at Disneyland that much anymore. I have seen some, when I was looking and doing research, I did see some social media posts that seems like they might have done it, depending on the quality, maybe to the early 2010s at Disneyland. I don't know. I don't know, but it just doesn't seem like they do it much anymore. So the sword pulling ceremony, I'm going to go on a little tangent here. It would just be like a kid would come up and Merlin would be like, oh yes, pull the sword. And then they'd have a mechanic where it could lift up, like, because if you actually, let me tell you, if you actually try to pull that sword, I think that like maybe a few people have pulled the sword, but like I think they're like very, very strong people. Like something in that mechanic, like it's interesting. And then I think they'd give them something to commemorate, like the kids something to commemorate or something. And Merlin, Arthur, and Archimedes appear in the Magic Happens parade at Disneyland. They have their own float. And the King Arthur Carousel is an opening day attraction at Disneyland. So kind of cool. So their appearances in the park are actually very scarce. So I don't think that Arthur has really ever been a walk-around character before. The other thing is, Sword in the Stone merch is insanely hard to find. I'm so sorry if you're a Sword in the Stone fan. Sword in the Stone merch is very hard to find because I think it's known, but it's one of those where it's like known, but it's kind of obscure and everything, and it's barely anyone's favorite and anything and all these things, and like, yeah. Anyway, side tangent aside, Madame Mim was apparently inducted into the Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse comic universes. So I was reading about that and I was like, that's kind of interesting. Apparently, like, she had, in some of the comics, she had a thing for Captain Hook, like, had a little crush on him and stuff. Like, y'all, should I start reading the Disney comics? Maybe. But that might be a very, very bad hobby to go down. And there's also a comic series with Merlin, Archimedes, and Madame Mim, and that was produced in Italy. I think it's kind of a spin-off series of what they do with Donald and in his universe. And Merlin is a reoccurring character in the Kingdom Hearts games. And there were plans for a live-action adaptation starting development in July of 2015. But as of March 2024, it was put on indefinite hold. And I think that Disney's being a little bit weary about live actions right now. And so we'll see. Do I think it needs it? No, because I feel like there's other people who have adapted this story. So I don't feel like it's necessarily needed. I also think that the live action movies have just kept going downhill more and more and more at faster and faster speed. So, yeah. Anyway, and this is actually very, very recent. A graphic novel sequel is set to come out on January 27th of this year, 2026. So I'm sorry if you're watching this later, but there's a graphic novel coming out. And I'll be honest, I might check it out. Maybe. If you want to see a video of me checking this out, comment down below. And maybe Venmo me a bit of money to pay for it. Just kidding. No. I don't need money. I promise. I don't need money. I'm okay, guys. Just if I need to do a series that's more expensive than what I do now, it might have to wait, is all I have to say, And yeah, that's all I have. So enjoy my husband and I's thoughts about The Sword and the Stone. And thank you so much for watching up to this point. So we just finished The Sword and the Stone, and it's really good. I don't have much to say about it because it's just Disney in a bottle. It's really good. It feels shorter than it is. It's an hour 20, but I feel like the pacing's so great. I guess something I didn't realize is how little Madam Mim is in it. She's really only in 15 minutes tops of the movie.
I think one of the things that makes it short is it almost feels like 4 episodes of a TV show rather than one long movie. You have the first section with the fish. Well, I guess you have an introduction or whatever, but then you have the second section with them as squirrels and then birds and and stuff, and then the face off with Madam Mim and the pulling of the sword. And so it's it kind of feels like it's a lot shorter than it is, which isn't inherently a bad thing. It's okay if a story feels short and sweet, because it kind of is in this case. He's learning life lessons. It's kind of, in a sense, it's kind of like Song of the South, you have to squint a little bit to see the comparison, but you have a big wise guy teaching the young fella how all these different life lessons through, in their case, different means, right? I'm trying to remember what's the guy's name on Song of the South. You have Johnny and
Uncle Remus.
Uncle Remus, thank you. I knew it was Uncle something, but Uncle Remus is telling it through stories, right? He's like, "Oh, here, let me tell you about the story of Briar Rabbit," while Arthur is learning these through magical experiences, oh, you want to learn about looking before you leap? Well, how about you live the life of something that constantly has to, like a squirrel, But, contextually, they're very similar stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so speaking of that, if you want to know how big a pike is, it's typically anywhere from a little under 2 feet to a little under 4 feet, which is a huge fish, by the way.
Yes, in that first scene with the fish, just for clarity, because it was a little bit random to go, yes, the pike, the fish.
Yes. I had to Google that during that. Yeah, I'll say Madam Mim is an underrated villain. I was saying during the movie, other villains, a lot of them have a reason for what they're doing. Some of them don't. Some of them are just the way that they are. I think I guess the Evil Queen has a reason for what she's doing. But, all of these other villains pretty much have a reason for what they're doing. Madam Mim is just a chaos demon.
She kind of gives off the vibe as the Queen of Hearts.
I agree.
They kind of are both kind of the same way, just this snooty of, I like having power because it makes me feel powerful, which isn't really a realistic trait people have, but, is all you need for a story.
That's how some people are. I will say that.
Well, usually everyone's got a reason why they want that power, but not everyone wants power just to have power,
Yeah. So, yeah, this movie, I don't know, the memories I have of it as a kid, I remember the Merlin scene where he's putting everything in the little hat. Not the hat, the bag. Jeez Louise. I remember the scene where with the dishes. I remember the fish scene. I remember the squirrel scene. I think I remember a little bit of the bird scene and a little bit of the Madam Mim scene. And then I remember the blast me to Bermuda part, and then he comes back from Bermuda. And that's literally it. I don't know why so formidable in my brain. Maybe I just remember the peril scenes because I just remember the fish and the squirrel scene. I remember the fish scene, self-explanatory. The squirrel scene, the thing that bugs me about the squirrel scene, like, I understand, but, like, Merlin lets it go on for way too long when he's not into that at all. And I do like that Merlin does get his karma. I think that's funny. And I think it's well-deserved. Something that I compared it to is kind of a little bit like Mary Poppins. I know that the Sherman Brothers wrote the music for this. But, like, hear me out. It feels a little Mary Poppins-y, where it's like going on magical lessons, learning life lessons through, like, magic, I guess. One flaw I see is that it's never truly, like, maybe I just didn't pick up on this. I feel like Merlin's, like, angriness for Arthur wanting to become a squire is really, really weird.
It explains it. He talks about how, like, he hates the medieval era because everyone's obsessed of being so powerful and being the strong knightly character. And he's like, dog, all of you are gonna die of dysentery in 5 years. Literally, this does not matter.
I don't know. I feel like he explains it, but also it's, like, really unconfounded. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like, to an extent, he definitely does kind of overreact a little. Like, knights are cool. Like, I get it. You can die from that hobby, I guess. It's not really a hobby at that time and age, but you get what I mean. Of, like, it's okay to want to do something like that for fun. Some people do skydiving in today's time, right? You can die from skydiving. That's just a fact of life.
I feel like, in a way, this is just, like, contact sports. Like,
yeah, you could see it as, like, a metaphor for that.
Yeah.
At least applying to today's time. And so he's kind of like, hey, Arthur, I'm trying to teach you how to be smart because, when you're King Arthur, you're kind of known to be this wise guy who knows what's up and is able to outsmart people with his wits. Being a knight is cool and all, but there's more to it than just your physical strength, I think is kind of what he's getting at. And that's why every time Arthur is like, oh, I'm working on this knight thing, or, oh, I became the squire, he's kind of like, when will you learn, child?
I will say, I did like the art style in it. I like that they kind of blended, like, the new Xeroxy style with kind of like a little bit of a Sleeping Beauty vibe. I thought it was really cool. The songs are good. I like the songs. I like the music. I like the utilization of the chorus and saving the chorus for, like, the end to make that scene impactful. Yeah. I don't think it's an A tier. Our B tier's getting really beefy, though.
I was gonna say, like, story-wise, it's a cool story. It's a cool story that I think they really applied well, but I don't think it really compares to the B tiers. But I'm okay with it being, like, the top of C tier. Does that make sense?
I wouldn't put it in C tier, though.
I think I'd put it, like, probably the very top of C tier, if not the very bottom of B. Because it's a good story. It's a good story. It's fantastically made.
Do I put it below Melody Time?
It's kind of just, like, the story does what it does. It's the origin of King Arthur. And then that's it.
Do I put it... because Melody Time has some good hitters, But, like, Melody Time also... Yeah, I really have to think on this. Because that's not to say that it's a bad film, but that's just to say that...
You know what I think the movie needed just a smidgen more? It needed a smidgen more on showing why Merlin cares about Arthur at all.
Yeah.
I think that is what it is missing. Going with the comparison I made earlier with Song of the South, you can tell Uncle Remus cares so much about Johnny. And that's what makes their relationship so impactful, is they have this very close person like an uncle, you know. While Merlin kind of, it's like he wants to bank on a relationship that's close like that, but doesn't really have that with Arthur as much. And so to Arthur, he kind of sees him probably more like a school teacher, which I think kind of makes the story feel a little bit lower of stakes, just very slightly. Like when Merlin leaves to Bermuda, you don't feel the same weight as Uncle Remus being kicked out.
Or like even Mary Poppins leaving at the end of Mary Poppins.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you don't feel that weight as much. Maybe it's because I knew he's coming back.
True. But that's kind of how I would see it, is just kind of like there's not as much of a connection. And I get it. Probably I haven't read the story of the Legends of King Arthur, so I'm not going to pretend that I know. But I wouldn't be surprised if that's the similar relationship to what they end up having in the actual story. You know?
Yeah. I don't know. I'd have to think about where it's ranking and yeah, but I think somewhere in B tier. I think it's good. I just like, I'm kind of shocked that they didn't try to do any sequels, any show or anything with this one.
Yeah.
I just think that it's not as iconic as people, I don't know.
I think it's really good, and I think it kind of deserves its status as an icon. But I think I get what you mean. It feels like there was more that could have been told with this story. I wouldn't even be surprised if when you're researching it, you find out it was meant to be an episodic series. Because it does kind of give off that vibe of, like, these are meant to be separate stories that either for one reason or another they couldn't make work, or maybe even on the cutting room floor they weren't even able to get it started in that form. So they just kind of compiled the story into one.
Or if just, like, I don't know, there was so much more to the story that was supposed to be there to add to it that just got left out. Yeah, but I'd still say it's solid. I mean, it's solid B tier, which is my bare necessities tier. So, like, I still think that it reaches that status of, like,
I think
it's
it is
a Disney film that you should watch.
If it is B, I would put it, like, towards the bottom of B.
I agree.
Like, it's a good film. It's a good film and is very pinnacle Disney, but I don't think it has as much value as the ones above it, at least in terms of, like, from a viewer angle. From a viewer angle who's not watching from the perspective of learning Disney history, which I know is the perspective you're going with.
Yeah.
But for the layman like me, who isn't approaching it from that angle, just as a movie, there are better movies. But there are a lot of worse movies, too. But, you know, there are better movies.
We watched Flubber last night. And it kind of sparked an idea for a new series that I might want to do, where I watch the originals and I also watch the remakes, and I critique them and I say which one I like more. And I give plot synopses of both and talk about their differences and their similarities. And yeah, and that would be like Disney live action movies that then got a remake later on. But for now, we're sticking with this series. Let me know if you want to have that series, because I would find it interesting. So by no means is this the worst Disney movie in the world. I have definitely seen worse, and I'm sure we're going to get to worse on this list, because we have a lot of direct-to-DVD stinkers on here. So we'll see. But yeah, do you have anything else to say?
No, not really. What? I genuinely don't have anything else.
I'm waiting for you to do your cool...
I don't have anything. This movie didn't give me any material. Well, it did, but I can't remember all of the words that Merlin said. Blast me to Bermuda!
All right. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for liking and commenting and subscribing. We'll see you in the next one. Bye.